So this is a panel of readings called Vibes Only, which is readings about happy moments. I thought we would, start the bookathon this Friday night with some happy readings to get you all in the mood for your big weekend of bookathon viewing. So to kick us off, we have new author, although not quite, brand new, Anna Graham, who is going to read first, as her name starts with an A. If everyone,
Lucky me.
right? I know, we're so smart here. If everyone else could please turn off their video and their audio, give Anna the floor. Anna, please do a quick intro to yourself and your book, and then you can start reading whenever you're ready.
So my name is Anna Graham, and right now I'm in sunny California, where it's a lovely 70 degrees and everything. And I apologize if you hear any planes flying over, but sitting outside was the best thing to do today. Today I'll be reading from my debut novel, which is Coming Up Clutch, available at Both Strokes, Amazon, and anywhere else you'd like to read. Um, the story is about a woman who gets roped back into playing softball again for college after leaving after so many years, and she runs back into the woman she had a crush on as well. And the scene I'm reading to you is the scene where when you realize that the woman that you've really been interested in for years has had a very good day and has gotten some really good news, you really want to help her celebrate. And when you own a batting cage, what do? You just take her for a batting lesson. So that's what this scene is the entire batting lesson. Ashton ran up to Razor and grabbed the bat and bucket before she toppled over. You should have asked me for help. You're the guest of honor. You don't carry anything. Ashton's cheeks warmed, and she nodded in acquiescence. Very well. Where shall we start? Get in the cage. Ashton did as she was told and watched Razor set up the tee stand and put the ball on top. She then placed the helmet on Ashton's head. This is a bat, Razor announced, holding it sideways out in front of her. Ashton arched her eyebrow at Razor's coy smile and snatched the bat out of her hand. All right, smartass, you don't have to go that far. I do know the mechanics, so we can skip a few steps. Razor snickered and gently grabbed Ashton's shoulders. Immediately, Ashton's body reacted. Her spine straightened, her leg muscles tightened, and she squeezed the handle of the bat. Razor glided them over to the tee. It was only then she stepped around to the other side that Ashton's body slumped forward and relaxed. Now, the key is to keep your eye on the ball. He said we could skip ahead. This we cannot skip, Razor said, her tone serious. This is the key to being able to hit. Now, get into your batter stance. Ashton did as instructed. The important thing to remember is if you see the ball, you can hit the ball. Bring the bat to that spot. Slowly, Ashton rotated her hips, and with minimal guidance from Razor's grasp, she lined the bat up with the center of the ball. Razor placed the bat back on Ashton's shoulders and stood behind her. Is it okay if I touch you? Ashton closed her eyes to stave off the reaction of her treacherous body to Razor's sultry tone. Only it probably wasn't sultry. Rough, yes, but not sultry, no matter what her body thought. She nodded and felt the light press of fingertips on either side of her neck. It's important to keep everything in line when you swing. Your neck stays in line with your shoulders and your hips. Every body part Razor mentioned was accented with the lightest touch. Only when she touched Ashton's hips did she apply a little more pressure and persuaded her to turn. As your hips move forward, make sure you twist your torso and bring the bat down on the same line. They moved in unison as Ashton shifted her way forward, keeping her eyes on the ball. Her arms came down and the bat lined up perfectly with the ball's center. How'd that feel? Better? Much better, Ashton breathed. Reset. Try it now at full speed. Razor's touch disappeared and she backed up against the fence behind them. Ashton took a deep breath to clear her head and focused on Razor's instructions. She shifted her weight back and brought the bat head down. When she made contact, She looked up and watched the ball fly through the air. She smiled, euphoria building inside her. For the first time in her life, she'd hit a softball. Razor clapped and cheered loudly behind her. Ashton Sharp just hit a walk-off single. The Hornets have won the championship. Ashton let the bat dangle from her hand and laughed at Razor, jumping up and down like a cheerleader. Why wasn't it a walk-off grand slam? Razor waved her off and placed another ball on the tee. If you do that 10 times in a row, then we'll see if you're grand slam level yet. Ashton picked up the bat and went through her motion again. This time, though, she hit the top of the tee and the ball dribbled onto the turf. The next one yielded a mild better result. Don't forget to keep everything in line. And take your time. We're not in any rush. Ashton took a deep breath and slowed her pace. Each hit progressively got better than the last. By the time they emptied the bucket of balls, Razor crowned her with the title, Queen of the Swinging Bunt. It's a title I'll happily accept, Ashton said. She helped Razor pack up all the gear and waited patiently when Razor gave closing instructions to Jimmy. As they exited the warehouse, Ashton rubbed her shoulder. Make sure you take ibuprofen and put ice on that when you get home. Will do. So where to next? What do you mean? This wasn't the only thing we planned to do to celebrate, was it? Razor gaped at her like a fish. Well, it was all I had planned, but I'm up for doing something else. What did you have in mind? I'm starving. How about you? Razor nodded and fished her keys out of her pocket. I could eat. Do you have a place in mind? I know this great little pizza place near campus, and my house is just around the corner. Perfect. They climbed into Razor's truck and pulled out of the parking lot. Ashton, still on a high from the hitting lesson, bounced up and down in the passenger seat. This had been such a great day. My study got approved, I learned how to hit a softball, and I'm on a date with my favorite person. Razor slammed on the brakes and turned to Ashton wide-eyed. Are we on a date? Yeah, I guess. In the sense of being two friends hanging out and getting dinner, that's all. Razor nodded and started driving again. It wasn't until they passed the sign in DeBono that she finally spoke. Jimmy thought we were on a date too. He did? Made fun of me. Told me I needed to brush up on my romance game, and the best I could come up with was batting practice. Ashton relaxed back in her seat. He's not wrong. Dinner and dancing would have been more appropriate. But batting practice is kind of like dancing. There's timing involved, beats, and specific steps to follow. And we are going to dinner. Razor snorted and shook her head. You're reaching, but I like the way you think. Where am I going? Take the next left and then it'll be on your right. You're going to love this place. They have the best Brussels sprouts and mozzarella pizza. Razor made a disgusted look. Brussels sprouts on a pizza? Will you stop being a baby and at least try it? Fine, I will try your healthy pizza, Razor conceded, and eased the truck into the parking space in front of the pizza chef sign. Brussels sprouts on a pizza, that's just wrong.
It's so lesbian to be like, wait, are we on a date?
Yeah.
That really resonates. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Barbara Ann Wright, who I believe has promised everybody dragons.
I always promise dragons. I don't know if I always deliver dragons. But I will happily read a book to you. So I am reading today from Wild Night Rising. Oops. Wild Night Rising. There we go. Which is my latest release. Gwyn is a herald for the mythical Wild Hunt, which in this day and age is a lesbian biker gang made up of elf-like creatures, Amazons, and Valkyrie. And in this scene, she's hoping to make some contacts in Houston that would help her prevent the hunt from committing murder. And she has just sat down at a bar to wait when someone runs past the window in front of her. Something short tore past the window outside, and a leggy brunette sprinted in hot pursuit. Gwyn leaned forward and caught a glance of the brunette's flapping suit jacket disappearing down the sidewalk, while a similarly dressed person across the street kept pace. Gwyn's law enforcement meter pinged. She ducked out of the bar and sprinted, no doubt in her mind that the three people running down the street in the early evening had dark had fey blood, or at least something not wholly human. She had to call on her own preternatural speed, and not because the two suit wearers had much longer legs. She settled into a fast, fluid gait that sent her mind back to chases through forests not yet tamed by human hands, when the world had been divided into fey and prey. And later, when Odin had led the wild hunt, and Gwyn had simply been among its ranks, not yet leader, and far from being reduced to she who comes before. In those days, their herald had only cautioned humans and animals and lesser fae to make way and hide in their homes or hedgerows because the hunt was coming through, and anyone outside risked being trampled or dragged along behind. Smiling, enjoying this chase after finding so little to enjoy of late, Gwyn whooped as she leapt a trash can, earning a few curious looks from the smattering of pedestrians in this small section of downtown Houston. Her quarry passed down a side street lined with apartments and condos, a few houses and businesses scattered through a city that seemed to have few zoning laws. Blocks of businesses turned residential with alarming quickness, and a chase such as theirs might be noticed by humans heading home for the day. But even that was exciting, and not in the usual ways it might get her killed. She was almost sorry when one of the suit-wearing agents brought down their target with a lunge and a forceful grip on the shoulder, whirling them around. As the two suits pinned their target's arms behind their back, a street light brought their features into clarity, and Gwyn paused in his shadow to watch. The leggy brunette appeared female, lean and powerful, while her even taller partner had darker hair and broader shoulders, probably male, though she'd have to be closer to smell them and couldn't guess at their gender. They were both attractive, though the sinewy toughness and subtle curves of the brunette appealed to her more. That and the determined look on her face as she recited the terms of some kind of contract to the target, whose pointed features, small build, and bushy beard hinted at satyr blood. When the agents began marching their captive in Gwyn's direction, she faded back a bit, content to watch a little longer, maybe follow these two to their base. A cry came from across the street. She looked that way, wondering if the satyr-born had an accomplice. But it was two humans, the larger male raising his hand to a smaller female in a skirt. "Stop, Holly," the male agent said, holding the arm of the brunette, who pulled toward the confrontation. "We don't have any jurisdiction over—" "Fuck jurisdiction." The fires of justice seemed to shine from the brunette's eyes, bright as any Valkyrie, but she'd have to fight her partner to get loose. Gwyn was already moving before the crack of a palm hitting flesh carried over the road, and the female human staggered back. Having a bastion of justice on her side suited Gwyn's plans nicely, and if that bastion owed her a favor, well, so much the better. Though people who picked on those weaker than them deserved to have the stuffing knocked out of them anyway. She twisted the big guy's arm behind him, wincing at the odor of cheap cologne. "If you want to pick on someone small, chum, try me," she said. He squealed as she drove him up on tiptoe, even though he was nearly a foot taller. The female human stood, eyes wide, staring at Gwyn as if she was the goddess Brigitte. "If you want to have a poke at him, darling," Gwyn said, "I'll hold him for you." The human female ran, yelling for a cab that was passing one street over while fumbling with her phone. "Shame," Gwyn said. She spun the man around and pulled his collar so he had to bend to her level. She let her power flow over his skin, not hurting him, but warning that she could. His pupils bloomed, and she could smell his fear as some ancient, primal part of his brain responded to her power, as if he'd encountered a tiger in the wild. She liked that image. "Yeah," she said, "I'm the baddest animal in the jungle, chum, and I'm looking after the women in these parts. You hit that one or any of the others round here again, and I'll come for your balls." When she let him go, he ran. She hoped her threat worked for at least a little while. More importantly, the leggy brunette was watching with admiration before looking at her partner in triumph, as if she had caused Gwyn's actions, or at least took part in the victory. That was perfect. They were pals already.
I love that this is your interpretation of a happy moment.
It's very happy. Everyone is happy except for one person. It's fine.
That's great. Well, there's hot women. You can't really complain.
No.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have Chelsey Lynford.
So I am reading from my second book, The Rise and Fall of Connor Cody. Connor is an actress and a musician, and what I refer to as a semi-reformed Hollywood wild child. And in this scene, she and her friend Melina are taking Connor's two nieces to Disneyland, and this is kind of Connor's first real outing as an aunt. She's recently kind of gotten back in touch with her estranged sister. The first half of the summer was one for Connor and her nieces to remember. She and Melina took both girls to Disneyland for 2 days, an event birthed when Hannah took a throwaway "sure babe" as a sworn oath. Connor was determined to make it a flawless outing. Without Melina, it might have all gone very wrong from the start. She remembered sunblock, made sure everyone drank enough water, and recognized when Hannah's crankiness meant they needed to ride the railroad or visit the Animation Academy while Connor took Sarah on the Matterhorn and Grizzly River Run. For her part, Connor made sure everyone got the rides they wanted and bought the girls so much merchandise. Their hotel room at the Grand Californian looked like Christmas morning. If she was going to do Disney, she was going to do it right. Mommy wants to talk to you because I have to take a bath. Hannah handed Connor's phone back to her. Do you need help or anything? Sarah followed her out. I'll watch Hannah before I shower. Thanks, kid. You're great. Connor winked, and Sarah puffed up with pride before schooling her features. Her sister Sadie smiled up from the phone. The girls seem to be having a good time. We all are. We'll sleep well tonight, though. I think we walked 10 miles, and Hannah wanted piggyback rides for half of that. Connor laughed. Thanks for doing this, Connor. You're going to be their hero forever. I'll settle for hip aunt. I've had fun, too. Not too many people recognize me, and I haven't been to Disney since... Perhaps she shouldn't mention that trip. 18 and very drunk, she'd been asked to leave when she and a group of other young Hollywood miscreants sang, to use the word lightly, the theme song on It's a Small World for the duration of the ride, substituting a few choice words. In several years, she finished, hoping the incident hadn't been as widely publicized as she remembered. You better rest up. Another day tomorrow. I hope the girls get to sleep soon. As soon as they're clean, and then so will Melina and I. Melina and I will what? Connor looked up and forgot how to speak. Melina emerged in a fluffy towel, curls as untamed as ever, clean and fresh-faced and far too beguiling with her straight-from-the-shower look. Connor was not allowed to imagine her showering. Nope, that was dangerous territory. Hearing two voices repeating her name stirred her from her stupor. Melina watched her with concern, while her sister smirked. Everything okay? Melina asked. Tired. Is that all? Connor narrowed her eyes at her sister, fairly certain she sensed teasing. Yep, so I'll text you when we leave tomorrow. Before she could hang up, Melina leaned down over Connor's shoulder to peer at the screen. Good night, Sadie. This was just unfair. All kinds of soft parts pressed against Connor while her nose took an olfactory journey down something sweet and clean. She closed her eyes and counted the back of her teeth with her tongue until Melina left. Then she beelined to the shower. A cold one. When she emerged, ruffling her hair with a towel, upbeat music echoed through the door. She trailed the sound with a frown, opening the bedroom to a party? Melina and the girls spun around the sitting area of their suite to ridiculously upbeat pop music, the volume rivaled only by their laughter. Connor assumed they were dancing, although their moves resembled nothing she'd ever seen. Aunt Connor, we're having a dance party! Hannah's gleeful voice bounced off the walls and ricocheted among the furniture with her tiny body. Sarah screeched to a halt, balls of pink blossoming on her cheeks. Come on, join us! Melina danced past her. Connor watched her jump around with Hannah, both with more enthusiasm than grace, neither seeming to care. She caught Sarah observing her. Uncomfortable awareness crept up Connor's neck that Sarah would follow whatever Connor did. Melina approached, seizing both of Connor's hands, her palms soft and warm. It's only us, Connor. No one's going to see you. That's not... 3 pairs of beseeching eyes rested on her. Any one of them, from the wide-eyed innocence of Hannah to the hero worship of Sarah, to the softness of Melina that Connor didn't dare linger on, would have worn her down. All at once, simply unstoppable. No one was going to see. No paparazzi would crowd so close she could smell their body odor. No tabloids would spread rumors. No managers would hound her about going to rehab. No smug middle-aged men on late-night talk shows would bring up unwanted nicknames. No sketch comedy shows would use her problems as fodder for laughs. She pulled away from Melina, whose smile trended downward, before blooming once more when Connor accessed music on her own phone. If you're going to have a dance party, you need the right soundtrack. At first, her limbs didn't feel like her own, heavy and clumsy as her body tried to remember how to move. She hadn't danced like this since she was a teenager, even in the privacy of her own home. On stage, she stalked, jumped, vamped, or even writhed, as the song demanded, but she never danced. Hannah seized her hands and leapt around with a frenzy, determined by her own whims rather than the beat. Connor couldn't help but laugh. Had she ever done anything so silly purely for the fun of it? Sarah showed off moves presumably from social media, which Connor gamely copied, before Hannah pulled her in dizzying circles. When she released her, Connor stumbled right into Melina's embrace. Oops! Melina straightened her with a giggle but didn't let go. They gazed at each other, and before Connor could talk herself out of it, she tightened her grasp and pulled Melina with her. They orbited the room, demonstrating exaggerated moves to the cheering girls. Connor would have danced forever just to bask in the glow of Melina's smile. After the song ended, they held hands a beat too long. Connor blinked just in time to stop herself from drowning in Melina's amber eyes. Averting her gaze, she pivoted to Hannah, picking her up and flying her to the bed. Dancing never got Connor anywhere but trouble. Her patience didn't last as she settled the girls, overtired and whiny. She stretched across the foot of the bed, scrolling through her phone, while they bickered with each other for no apparent reason. Finally, she snapped. That's it. No story, no tucking in, nothing. Go to sleep. A space alien probably could have heard Hannah's wailing. Head in her hands, Connor looked for help from Melina, who'd popped her head in. It's really sad, Melina said in a raised voice, waiting until the girls quieted to continue, that you two can't get along, because I happen to know your aunt has a super good story prepared. That was news to Connor. Hannah immediately quieted and scurried under the covers, while Sarah settled on the opposite side of the bed, buried in her phone. Satisfied, Connor lay between them and concentrated for a second. A long time ago, there was a land called Prydain, and in this land lived a boy named Taryn, a girl named Elenwy, and a pig named Hen Wen. Surprisingly, Hannah stayed awake until Hen Wen was rescued and Connor called time. I want a pig, Hannah said, rolling onto her stomach. But what happened to the Horned King? That's for next time. Okay. Aunt Connor, is Melina your girlfriend? No, Connor said too loudly. She's not. We're just friends. Do you have a girlfriend? No, I mean, yes, I do. Her head dropped along with her stomach. What was wrong with her? Victoria had been a significant part of her life on and off for several years. She was a total smoke show, and anyone would be lucky to have her as a girlfriend. Connor was just tired, that was all. I wish Melina was your girlfriend. Connor was past mistress in the art of giving in to temptation, but even she refused to go down that path. She's my friend and yours, and sometimes that's better. Good night, kid. She encountered said temptation outside the door. Thanks for the assist. Connor held up her hand for a high five. We made a pretty good team today. Connor watched her walk into the bedroom they'd be sharing. Maybe she should sleep on the couch. Yeah, we did. A muffled sound diverted her attention. Sarah's eyes widened as she peeked from her room before another giggle escaped the hand over her mouth. Find something funny, do you? Sarah glanced at the door Melina had closed behind her, then grinned. Connor and Melina sitting in a tree. K-I-S. Finish that word, and you're dead.
Kids are the worst.
The worst. And the best.
I did like the dance party, though. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Margo Glynn. Hi, Margo.
Hello. I'm Margo. I write contemporary sapphic romance, usually set in Texas, because that's where I live. I'm going to be reading from my new book, my second book, A Million Dollar Marriage. Look how pretty that is. I love all the color. It is a reunion romance about Elsie and Petra, who are brought back together by the promise of an inheritance and realize that there is nothing they want more than each other. For this scene, they are pretending that everything is fine between them while they enjoy Thanksgiving with Petra's family. Petra sat between Dottie and Elsie with plenty of room. They were a large group, but the outdoor picnic table was larger, built with the anticipation of future grandchildren and great-grandchildren, an expectation that Petra's extended family had no trouble meeting. Petra watched a baby in a high chair squishing both hands into their potatoes, opening and closing with fascination. No one objected. They were outside, after all, and if the parents could eat in peace for a few minutes, everyone was happy. Elsie gave a little moan when she had her first mouthful of dressing. Petra tried not to let Elsie's sounds trigger any associated memories. She concentrated on her own overfilled plate, the roasted carrots, the deviled eggs with their dash of paprika, the sun tea that had spent the morning brewing in glass pitchers on the picnic table. Petra got up for seconds and brought back an extra dinner roll for the baby, who seemed to be growing bored of throwing handfuls of mashed potatoes into the grass. To her surprise, the baby laughed, grabbed the roll, and squished it just as joyfully. Now Dottie leaned forward, speaking to Elsie over the dish-covered picnic table. How's Betty? I haven't spoken to her in weeks. Elsie glanced at Petra before answering, filling Dottie in on her Grandma Betty's health and her insistence that the kitchen staff had suffered some kind of horrible loss because no one with working taste buds would serve food that bland. Somehow, that led to Dottie's retelling of the picnic table origin story. Petra half listened at first, then found herself drawn into the story she'd heard 100 times, because Dottie, with her gestures and vivid expressions, could make even an old story captivating. We had a regular size one until it was nothing but rotten boards and rusty nails. We'd run out of space, then have to set up a card table next to it, and then another. One year, we just told everyone to bring a picnic blanket because we were all out of room. Well, Doug had had enough. We went that very next weekend and bought the longest boards at the hardware store and built it ourselves, hammering away until after dark. But no one ever had to bring their own picnic blankets again. The old tables were in the shade, weren't they? Dottie's sister Duchess asked. They were, and I miss the shade too. Maybe we can get some umbrellas and drill holes all the way down to the table. Shouldn't be too hard. Doug opted not to put this one directly under all the trees because of that time a 7-foot-long cottonmouth dropped right out of the oak and into his lap, just plopped down in a heap. Duchess choked on her iced tea. Oh goodness, did he get bit? Dottie laughed. He's still walking around, so no. He stood up like he was dusting off his pants, and the snake dropped right to the ground and slithered off, fast as if he'd been the shocked one. We got to meet some of the wildlife this morning, too, Petra said. I don't think Angie's horse counts, Dottie said, waving. From the far end of the table, Angie waved back, trying to smile and chew at the same time. We saw snakes and minnows and a frog, Elsie exclaimed, none of which tried to trample us. She gave a squinty, fake smile in Angie's direction. You don't care much for horses? Dottie asked. They're fine from a distance, said Elsie. Up close, they are much too big. Same with bears. And dolphins? Petra blinked innocently. Not everyone thinks it would be fun to be dragged to their deaths by the nice cousins of sharks, Elsie shuddered. They're smart, Petra added. They're crafty. They do tricks and play catch. They're evaluating their future victims. They've literally saved people's lives, said Petra. Elsie protested loudly. They literally masturbate using eels. 5 people started choking. One covered her daughter's ears. Duchess blinked, her fork suspended in midair. Elsie's face reddened, her response drowned out by everyone else's laughter. Dottie and Petra laughed so hard they went silent, gasping for air. That can't possibly be true, Dottie finally managed. It is, one of the aunts chimed in. I saw it on National Geographic. I will give my last dinner roll to anyone who will change the subject. Elsie held it up enticingly. Petra took it. Elephants masturbate too. Not quite the subject change I was looking for, Elsie muttered. Petra took a big bite of her roll, grinning. I'm fairly sure all the great apes, Dottie began. Oh, look at the time. Elsie jumped to her feet. Doug, could I help bring out the pies, please? Doug took pity on Elsie and led her into the kitchen, where she whipped cream with a hand mixer until her cheeks returned to their usual temperature. She put in one earbud and listened to her meditation podcast as she whipped, finding that the 2 activities complemented each other. Forget the rest of her plan. She was determined not to say another word until Sunday. How could Elsie focus on her flaws when Petra was grinning at babies and looking so much more at ease than Elsie usually saw her? Oh, Petra was anxious about their relationship, sure, and Elsie swore she'd heard Petra's blood pressure rise when she'd come back to the cabin and found Elsie sitting in nothing but a towel. But Petra here was a totally different creature than Petra in Houston. At home, the daily stresses seemed to bend her back with their weight. Petra here stood tall and smiled and was shockingly willing to make new friends. Elsie couldn't understand it, and she didn't want to try. It would be far too easy to fall back in love with the Petra who was sitting just outside, laughing with her family and going back for seconds. Elsie finished the whipped cream to Doug's approval and took it outside, where some of the less miserably stuffed family members were clearing empty bowls and pans to make room for the desserts. Usually there was a large assortment of pies, some that Doug had made himself and others from a local bakery. Today there were all those, plus cakes and cookies and brownies and even eclairs. There was a collective groan of misery when Doug brought out his home-churned ice cream. As usual, half the group decided they would either need a nap or a walk before partaking, while the other half were already saying, just one more piece. Elsie and Petra were always in the former group, and while they usually joined an assortment of cousins and nephews on a walk, nieces and nephews on a walk, today they both staggered back to the cabin. It was all the sun and swimming this morning, Elsie claimed, yawning. Oh yeah, definitely not that and the massive amount of food we consumed. Petra opened the cabin door and let herself fall face first onto the bed. Scooch, Elsie demanded, and then flopped down too. Petra reached an arm around her as though sleepiness and habit had worked together for a moment to make her forget. Then she stopped and pulled away, rolling onto her back. And even though Elsie would certainly have pushed her away, the motion, the removal, still made her want to cry. Soon Petra was dozing, and Elsie dared to open her eyes. For a while she just watched, letting herself do what Petra clearly hadn't when she'd rolled away. Elsie let herself forget for just a moment that everything had gone wrong. Because in all those years before it did, Elsie had loved her. She'd loved Petra so mindlessly that for 10 years, she'd never once thought of leaving.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Margo. There's so much in that that I can't even pick just one thing. Next up, we have Renee Roman. Hi, Renee. Go ahead and introduce yourself and start reading whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. I'm Renee Roman, she, her pronouns. I live in upstate New York, and we're hopeful. The fountain was put in the pond, so spring has arrived. And today I'll be reading from my March novel that you're not going to be able to see just because, oh, there it is. When Hearts Collide. And for everybody who asked the question, when was my fur baby going to be in a book? She made her debut in this book. Let me see if I can get this to come up. And there she is. So, yes, you can stop asking now. And in this reading, Harlan McGee is one of the main characters, and the other is Annie Dawson. Harlan McGee can't believe her luck. Not only is she dealing with the love of her life being in a 2-year-long coma, but now she has someone else to worry about. Annie Dawson wasn't angry about the damage caused by the minor fender bender, but messing with her internal clock made her anxious in another way. After agreeing not to file a police report, Harlan had insisted on exchanging information anyway, and Annie had relented. Anything to get her back on schedule. In this scene, Annie is presenting her employer's organization to a local real estate company, and Harlan is returning to the job she never wanted. Annie pushed the down button and waited, telling herself the moving box she was about to step into would not plummet the 11 floors below. She studied the carpet of intricate geometric symbols and began counting. The elevator doors opened, and she looked up. Things did not often surprise her, but she was so caught off guard, her jaw dropped. Annie? Harlan asked. Hi, she said, after regaining some of her equilibrium. She glanced around, checking the large sign on the wall. Annie was sure she'd been swept into another dimension. What were the odds of her and Harlan meeting twice in the same week? Are you okay? Harlan stood a few feet away, looking as confused as Annie felt. Were you looking for me? No, I'm here for work. Harlan waved to a staff member who greeted her from across the room. Well, what are you doing here? I needed to stretch my legs and I went for coffee. Harlan held up the to-go cup that Annie hadn't noticed. This is where you work? Annie asked. She had no idea the person who hit her car worked at the lucrative company she was wooing for sponsorship. Forrest Enterprises is my family's business. Harlan's cheeks turned pink. Oh, Annie's mind was working double time. So when you said the car you were driving was a company car, you meant it belonged to your family? Yes. Harlan glanced at the staff moving about and gestured to the waiting area just off the lobby. Are you okay from the accident? She shoved a hand in her pocket in a tell that said she was more nervous than when Annie had last seen her. I'm fine. You didn't text me. You didn't bother to text me either. Harlan laughed. Will our conversations always turn into witty banter? Annie studied Harlan. Aside from their recent meeting, Annie couldn't shake the feeling she knew her from somewhere. Are you under the impression we're going to be friends? People meet in a lot of ways, Annie, though ours was a bit unusual. Harlan grinned. Annie wondered if she was making fun of the awkward situation. It was difficult to tell. What kind of work do you do? The fact that Harlan had chosen to ignore her remark about becoming friends led Annie to believe it was a stretch or an outcome Harlan wasn't interested in. I'm the fundraiser for the Society of Neurodiversity. Ah, gathering intel, Harlan smiled again. This time Annie knew Harlan was teasing, and tingles coursed through her. Actually, I already did the research. I met with the financial officer this morning. Harlan chuckled. Then you met my sister Jane. Is she a Forrest? Annie calculated the various ways that Harlan and her sister were connected to the business. No, she's a McGee, but she doesn't correct people if they happen to assume she's a Forrest. It gets complicated, since most of the workforce are relatives. Are there any more McGees that I should look out for? Annie's mind raced. She hadn't prepared for an office full of McGees. How would she have known? The family resemblance was obvious in the color of their eyes and full lips. Not that she'd noticed before now. A few, though the Forest members outnumber the McGees. Annie wanted to spend more time getting to know Harlan. Thanks for the heads up. Nervousness wasn't an emotion that Annie had to deal with very often, and she didn't like it. I'd love to chat for hours, but I'm expected back at the office. Of course. Harlan's gaze moved quickly to her lips and back before she held out her hand. I'm glad you're all right. After a brief hesitation, she took Harlan's hand. Thank you. It had taken years to get past her aversion to touching a stranger, even if it was only for a handshake. Intimacy was another story, one that she'd also overcome with the help of a kind and loving person who showed her what she was capable of. Maybe we'll see each other again. Likely not, unless you plan on driving into my car again. Annie didn't want to be with anyone who threw her off kilter. I mean, here, unless you're a one and done kind of woman. Harlan's face blanched. Misinterpretation wasn't a mistake she often made, but being around Harlan made Annie do things she wouldn't usually do, especially when she was working. Did we meet before the accident? She tried to shake the deja vu of recognition, but she couldn't. Harlan stared at her, and Annie's lower region tightened under the scrutiny. I would have remembered if we did. Annie took a quick breath. What did that mean? Why was she questioning herself when she had a handle on her actions and reactions and having thought through every possible scenario and the implications of each? Have a good day, Harlan. She needed to escape the sparkling ice blue eyes boring into hers. You as well, Annie. I hope we can help your organization. Harlan headed into the sea of cubes. Annie pushed the button a second time and willed the elevator to arrive. She felt Harlan's gaze as she waited, surprised that pleasure coursed through her in equal measures of excitement and trepidation. It had been a while since anyone had looked at her with something other than confusion or disgust. The ding brought another emotion, relief, and she stepped into the elevator. When she turned, Harlan stood in the center of the lobby, smiling at her and waving goodbye.
Oh, that was sweet. I love that.
Finally, I hit it.
You used to bring in the spice, but today you brought the sweet. I like it. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Last up, we have Shelley Thrasher.
Okay, I'm a BSB long-term editor and author, and for the first time I've written a mystery. This is with a new partner, and we're focusing, it's a cozy mystery with Nancy, kind of a Nancy Drew twist to it. The two 80-year-olds that are the stars of this book are Taylor and Mary Lee. They're in their 80s and they have two teenage junior sleuths, Zoe and Gloria, and they are preparing to outwit a villain who's been swindling senior citizens in a local nursing home in small town East Texas, which is where I'm from. And this is the book. Nice cover. Thanks for trusting us enough to let us follow the bad guy, Zoe said. I can't wait, but I really need to practice driving your old foreign car, Taylor. So Zoe was almost jumping up with and down with excitement. Well, then why don't you two hop in? I'll get in the back, though I won't be able to stay there very long because it's so darn small. Gloria, you take the passenger seat and understudy Zoe. Taylor walked around her prized blue convertible, its sleek lines never failing to delight her, and its vintage, not old, and brilliantly maintained, which is necessary for this baby. As the others watched, Zoe slid into the driver's side. She immediately pushed back the very reluctant seat and coaxed the seatbelt to let out more length than ever before. It took a few minutes, and Taylor started to get off the narrow platform that constituted the Carmen Gia's snug back seat. Just then, though, Zoe turned the key and the car roared to life. But as she was searching for drive, the shifter dropped into reverse and Zoe's foot fell off the clutch. The car jolted back and wham! It hit something and died. Both girls turned around, pale, apparently afraid Taylor hadn't survived. Taylor's crumpled body must have looked vanishingly small, but she did groan. Thankfully, she was alive and unharmed. What the hell, she grumbled. Zoe turned bright pink as apologies tumbled from her mouth. I'm so sorry, Miss Taylor. I thought I knew how to drive a stick shift. I don't know what happened. Gloria was staring out the rearview mirror on her side. I hope we didn't smash Miss Marilee's Rogue. She opened her door to help Taylor crawl out, and Zoe met them at the back of the car. Thank heavens, Taylor said. The curb stopped you before you could take out the Rogue. Nice work, Zoe. But maybe we should give Gloria a shot at driving? Oh, no, please, Miss Taylor. Gloria said, I've never driven a car like this. Please give Zoe a second chance. She's a really good driver most of the time. She's just not used to stick shift. What's your opinion, Zoe? I'm game if you are. Taylor stretched her legs to make sure they still functioned. I had a few false starts the first time I drove a car like this, too. The pink in Zoe's cheeks began to recede. Yes, please. I'd like to try again. I remember now about the clutch and where reverse is. I should do better this time, but maybe you could just watch me through the car window while I get started so you don't have to curl up in that tiny space back there. That's a good idea, Taylor said. It's so cramped I couldn't see anything anyway. Okay, you two, mount up and give her a go. This time the car moved quickly around the driveway and onto the side street. The gear was soon out of sight and smooth sounds of shifting reassured Taylor that this shakedown cruise was a big success.
Awesome. I love it. Another happy moment. If everyone can jump back on the Zoom, we do unbelievably have a couple of minutes. Okay, so since this topic is happy moments, I want to know what was your happiest moment in writing this book?
Ooh.
Everyone's like, there wasn't one. It was awful.
Mine was writing with a partner for the first time. It was delightful. I really recommend it. It's and also writing a comedy. We started out writing a combination of a romance and a mystery, and our editor said you can't have it both ways. So I decided to give up romance and try mystery, and it was a lot of fun, something very different.
Okay. Cool. I like that. Shout out to Ann Faulkner. Barbara, how about you? Happy moment writing this book.
Definitely researching all the mystical creatures and things that I got to include and getting lost several times down research holes going, this doesn't have anything to do with anything, but I'm going to read about it anyway.
Always good.
Mhm.
What do you use to like research that? Is there particular like sites or search engines or AI or
I guess I go on the internet when I first do it, I just go out there and just, Google the thing and then click on everything. But actually, university websites are really, really cool resources to use when researching stuff like this because they all have like mythology departments and that sort of thing. And all of those people are dying to tell you everything you ever wanted to know about any topic.
I see a new career path for you, Barbara.
Boring people about mythology? Yes.
Yes.
Margo, how about you?
Absolutely.
Happy moment writing this book.
So one of my main characters, Petra, is a gardener and she's very into plants. And so kind of just getting to like follow her through all of her passions. I also I mean, I love plants. And so she has she's kind of rewilded her backyard. And so it's all like, just tall wildflowers with a path through it. And getting kind of to imagine doing that in a place where you can't with an HOA, it was lovely.
Nice. I love that. Chelsey, how about you? Happy moment.
Finishing it. Shelley can attest to that. No, it's a slow burn, and there are kind of like multiple potential love interests in the beginning. So when they finally kissed, I was so ready for that, and I was so happy that they got there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's Deb Jackson who always says, like, if you're not dying for it, like the reader won't be dying for it either. So that's always a good note there.
Mhm.
Renee, how about you? Happy moment.
Oh, including Maisie. I mean,
Yeah.
she is such a character on her own. Um, yeah, we have quite the history, and everything that she does in the book is real. Like we have full-blown conversations sometimes, and people have witnessed it. She understands me. Of course, it's probably just that she's sick of hearing me say the same things over and over again. But she was a fun character, and she was fun to play around with and include. So that was a happy moment for me.
I feel like there
Nice.
might be a paranormal in your future somewhere with a catware of some kind.
You never know. You know how I am. I just go off on these little side bars and come up with stories.
Awesome. And Anna, how about you? Happy moment writing this book.
Aside from watching all the softball for research purposes, because I'm a huge softball fan, when I finally had the epiphany of just having to go back in and restructure some of my characters and some of my plot points and everything to make it more inviting, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Like I stopped digging my heels in on things that I was trying to make work but just didn't work. And I found it was like, okay, let's change this. And even though it took massive rewrites, it made the book so much better when I finally stopped doing that. So
I think you just made Shelley's night. That there's an author whose happiest moment is editing.
yeah.
That's
Well, I
awesome.
mean, when you're writing, you just get so close to it and everything, and you're just like saying, "No, I don't care what everybody else is saying. This is working." And then you realize you step away from it, like, "Okay, maybe this wasn't working as much as I thought it was." And you finally start listening to people a little bit more, and then you're like, "Okay, how do I fix it?" And that's when the real fun begins.
Awesome. Hope the rest of you are taking notes. This is the answer on a panel with 3 editors. Okay. Thank you all so much. They're fabulous readings. You can find the links to all the books in the chat if you would like to check them out. We are running a sale. They will be on sale all weekend through the middle of next week. Thank you so much for being here. Please join us for the next one, which is, I have no idea. My list has gone AWOL here. Endings that earn it. So that is a panel discussion. It should be a good one. We hope to see you there. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.